The morning rain in Chicago wasn't kind that day. It came sideways, biting through coats and ambition alike. Nora Blake clutched her worn trench coat tighter as she hurried down Monroe Street, boots splashing through shallow puddles that mirrored the gray sky above. Her phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Ramirez. "Lila ate only half a toast this morning. She looks pale again, mi amor." Nora's stomach clenched. Half a toast meant her daughter's anemia was acting up again. 7 years old, all smiles and watercolor dreams, but too often too weak to finish breakfast. She typed fast, walking. "Please keep her home from school today. I'll call the clinic later." Then she checked her watch, 7:43 a.m. Her boss, Craig Doyle, had warned her the day before. "One more late clock in, Nora, and we'll have to talk about your future here." She'd smiled politely at the word future, as if it were something she had the luxury to plan. Helios Dynamics was only 3 blocks away now. If she caught the next crosswalk light, she'd make it before the 8 a.m. check-in. She quickened her pace, dodging umbrellas and puddles, her hair sticking to her cheeks. Then it happened. A sharp screech of brakes cut through the drizzle, a blur of movement, and a thud that made everyone on the sidewalk stop for half a second. A delivery bike had swerved too late. A man in a charcoal gray suit hit the pavement hard, his briefcase flying open, papers scattering like white birds into the wet air. The cyclist muttered an apology and sped off. People looked, then kept walking. Nora froze. For a moment, the world slowed into silence except for the rain tapping against metal and glass. The man groaned, trying to rise, but his leg twisted wrong, and his face drained of color. She looked at him, then at her watch, 7:46. If she stopped now, she'd never make it to work on time. Her heart raced. Craig's words echoed in her head, his tone sharp as the rain. Deadlines matter more than excuses. But then came another sound, a low, pained breath from the man, and that was enough. Nora dropped her bag, knelt beside him. "Sir, don't move. You might have hurt your ankle," she said, her voice steady but urgent. He tried to push himself up. "No, I'm fine. Just help me stand. I can't miss my meeting." His voice was low, measured, but strained, the kind of tone used to giving orders, not taking help. "You're not going anywhere on that leg," Nora replied. "You need an ambulance." "No ambulance," he insisted, jaw clenched. "It's just a sprain. I'll manage." She exhaled, scanning the street for help, but people were already passing by again, avoiding the scene like it was contagious. "Look," she said firmly, "you can fire me later for calling, but I'm not letting you crawl to your meeting." She pulled out her phone and dialed 911. The man leaned against the brick wall, rain sliding off his hair. "You don't understand." "I understand perfectly," Nora cut him off, voice trembling but decisive. "You're hurt, and I'm not leaving you here." She gave the dispatcher their location, described the injury, and stayed beside him, shielding his face with her coat from the rain. "Name's Nora," she said, to fill the silence. "You'll be okay." He gave a faint nod, grimacing as he tried to adjust. His expensive watch caught a streak of gray light. It looked wildly out of place against the dirty pavement. When she reached for his briefcase, a gust of wind flipped one of the papers toward her boot. She caught it before it hit a puddle, and froze. Letterhead, Helios Dynamics. Name, Adrian Wells. Title, Chief Executive Officer. Her pulse stopped for a second. "You work at Helios?" she asked quietly. The man's blue-gray eyes met hers. "Yes. Do you?" Nora's throat tightened. "Marketing department, administrative assistant." For a moment, neither spoke. The city noise faded into the rain's steady rhythm. She'd seen him before, of course. His portrait hung in the company's lobby, framed in steel and glass. But in person, soaked, bleeding slightly from the temple, his suit stained with coffee, he seemed disarmingly human. "I didn't realize the CEO walked to work," she murmured, half to herself. He tried to smile. "Needed the fresh air. Guess the city had other plans?" Nora huffed a nervous laugh, glancing at her watch again. 7:52. Too late. Even if she ran now, she'd be late enough for Craig to make good on his promise. But she stayed. Sirens wailed faintly in the distance. The rain softened into mist as the ambulance pulled up. The paramedics hurried over, assessing the injury quickly. Fractured ankle, possible sprain. One of them turned to Nora. "You called it in?" She nodded. "Yes." "Good job. Most people just walk by." Nora looked at Adrian, whose expression was a strange mix of pain and disbelief. When the paramedics lifted him onto the stretcher, he reached out, catching her wrist lightly. "Thank you, Miss..." "Blake," she said. "Nora Blake." His grip loosened. "You didn't have to stop." She met his eyes, rain still dripping from her lashes. "I think I did." He studied her for a moment, then gave a small, genuine smile, something warm and fleeting that cut through the gray morning. As the doors of the ambulance closed, Nora's phone vibrated again. A message from Diane at work. "Craig's furious. He just started the meeting. Where are you?" Nora stared at the screen, the ambulance lights flashing red against her reflection in a puddle. Her life was about to change, though she didn't know it yet, because sometimes the choice that ruins your morning becomes the one that saves your future. The ambulance rocked slightly as it sped through the slick Chicago streets, the smell of antiseptic mixed with rain and cold air. Nora sat on the narrow bench beside the stretcher, gripping the rail as the paramedic wrapped Adrian Wells's swollen ankle. He was pale now, though his voice still carried that quiet authority. "You didn't have to come with me," he said through clenched teeth. "I couldn't just leave you there," Nora replied. "Besides, I think someone needs to make sure you don't talk your way out of medical care." That almost drew a laugh from him, a short, breathy sound between pain and disbelief. As the siren faded into the distance, Nora found herself studying him. Up close, the CEO didn't look untouchable at all. His tie was half undone, his cuffs stained with mud, one hand gripping the edge of the stretcher so tightly his knuckles whitened. "So, you really walk to work?" she asked softly. "Not usually," he admitted, "but some days I miss feeling part of the city I built my company in." He winced as the medic adjusted his foot. "Guess the city decided to remind me I'm not invincible." Nora smiled faintly. "No one is." He turned his head toward her, curious. "You work at Helios, right? You mentioned that. Marketing admin. I schedule meetings and remind managers when their coffee budgets run out." "That sounds like vital work," he said, and she couldn't tell if it was humor or sincerity. "It's a paycheck," she murmured, "and health insurance. My daughter needs it." Adrian's gaze softened. "How old is she?" 7. Her name's Lila. Smartest kid I know, but she's been dealing with anemia. She gets tired easily." Nora hesitated, realizing she was telling her boss's boss personal details he hadn't asked for. "Sorry, I didn't mean to overshare." "Don't apologize," he said quietly. "The world could use more parents who actually talk about their kids." The paramedic interrupted, signaling they were almost at St. Vincent's Hospital. Adrian exhaled a shaky breath. Nora glanced at her watch. 8:07 a.m. The meeting had already started. Inside the ER, chaos ruled in its orderly way. Beeping monitors, nurses calling out numbers, stretchers rolling past. Nora followed the staff to the exam area until a nurse gently stopped her. "Ma'am, we'll take it from here." Adrian caught her eye as they began rolling him toward radiology. "Thank you, Ms. Blake. I mean that." She nodded. "You're welcome, Mr. Wells. Try to rest." He smiled weakly. "I'll try, but I have a feeling my assistant's about to call me 50 times. When he disappeared behind a curtain, Nora exhaled for the first time since the accident. Her coat clung to her like a damp shell. She took a shaky breath and pulled a card from the floor where it had fallen out of his briefcase earlier. Monica Chen, executive assistant to Adrian Wells, she found. A corner in the waiting area dialed the number, and when a brisk voice answered, she said, "Hi, this is Nora Blake. Mr. Wells was in an accident on Maple and 5th. He's at St. Vincent's now. They're treating a broken ankle, but he's stable." Monica's tone shifted immediately. "Oh my God, thank you for calling. I'll head there right away." "Please tell him he's in good hands," Nora said before hanging up. Only then did she notice the time. 8:42 a.m. She had missed the department meeting entirely. Panic rushed back like a tide. She slung her wet bag over her shoulder, whispered a quick "thank you" to the nurse at the desk, and ran out into the drizzle. The hospital doors hissed closed behind her, cutting off the steady heartbeat of machines. By the time Nora reached the Helios Tower, the rain had turned to mist. Her boots left streaks of mud on the marble floor as she swiped into the employee lobby. She tried to catch her breath, smoothing her soaked hair into something vaguely professional, but Craig Doyle was already standing by her desk, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. "Nora," he said without greeting. "My office. Now." The entire marketing floor went silent. Nora followed him into the glass-walled office, water dripping from her coat onto the polished floor. Craig didn't sit. He paced once behind his desk, then turned sharply. "Do you know what time it is?" "Yes, I..." "Don't." He raised a hand. "Just don't. I already know what you're going to say. Traffic, trains, childcare, weather. It's always something. It wasn't any of those, Nora said, trying to stay calm. There was an accident outside Helios. Someone was hurt. He barked a dry laugh. And you decided to play hero instead of showing up to your actual job? Nora flinched. I called an ambulance, that's all. It was the right thing to do. Craig leaned forward, his voice lowering. You're a single mother, aren't you, Nora? I respect that, but you need to understand something. This company runs on discipline, not sentiment. Her cheeks burned. Discipline doesn't mean ignoring a person lying on the ground. He ignored her. This is your third tardy this quarter. Company policy allows termination after 3. You knew that. Craig, please. I've worked weekends, stayed late every week. I'm not asking for special treatment. Just understanding. He picked up a folder from his desk, slid a single sheet across the glass. Understanding doesn't pay for missed deadlines. Sign this. Nora stared at the page. Termination notice, effective immediately. Her mouth went dry. You're serious. I've already processed payroll. HR will deactivate your badge by noon. Clear your desk. Her hands trembled as she picked up the paper. You're firing me because I stopped out to help someone injured in front of our building? I'm firing you because you chose something else over your responsibilities. His tone was ice. That's not how Helios operates. Nora's throat tightened, but she refused to let him see her cry. Then maybe Helios needs to rethink what kind of company it wants to be. Craig didn't respond. He only gestured toward the door. You have 1 hour. Nora gathered her things from the small cubicle. The framed photo of Lila, with marker stains on her cheeks, the little potted succulent that never quite grew straight, and her coffee mug that said, Best Mom in the Galaxy. Her coworkers avoided eye contact as she packed. The silence felt heavier than words. At the elevator, she looked back once more at the office where she'd spent 8 months trying to prove she could balance motherhood and professionalism. Then the elevator doors slid shut. Inside the metal box, Nora pressed her palm to her forehead, trying to steady her breathing. She thought about the hospital, about Adrian Wells in that bed, and the absurdity of it all, saving the CEO's morning and losing her own future in the same breath. Outside, the rain had stopped. The city looked washed clean, but inside her chest was a storm she couldn't name. She stepped out onto the sidewalk, clutching the box of her belongings like a shield. Her phone buzzed, a message from Mrs. Ramirez. Lila's feeling weak again, Querida. I gave her the iron syrup, but she's resting now. Are you okay? Nora typed back slowly, fingers shaking. I'm okay, just heading home. She didn't add the truth, that she no longer had a workplace to go back to. As she walked toward the bus stop, the wind picked up, scattering a few damp leaves across the pavement. She didn't know it yet, but in one of the top-floor offices she'd just left behind, Adrian Wells, now resting in a hospital bed, was asking his assistant for the name of the woman who refused to walk away. And that question would soon change both of their lives. The wind hit harder once Nora stepped out of the Helios building. The world outside was bright and indifferent. Her reflection flickered in the glass doors behind her. A woman holding a cardboard box filled with the small weight of 8 months. 5 framed photos of her daughter, 1 crooked little cactus, and a chipped mug painted with childish stars and the words, Best Mom. That was everything she had left of her job, and maybe, she thought bitterly, of her stability too. The city moved around her, impatient and unaware. Businessmen checked watches, tourists laughed over coffee, taxis honked at lights. For a second, she wanted to scream just to prove she still existed, but she didn't. She just started walking toward the bus stop, hugging the box close to her chest as if it were keeping her together. The bus arrived with a hiss, and she climbed aboard, sliding into a window seat near the back. Rain streaked the glass. The smell of damp coats and diesel filled the air. She took out her phone and pressed Mrs. Ramirez. Home. It rang twice. Hola, mija, came the warm voice of her elderly neighbor. You're done early today? Nora hesitated. Sort of. Mrs. Ramirez, She stopped. The words were heavy. I got fired. A shocked pause. Fired? But why, querida? You work so hard. I was late again. It wasn't my fault this time, I swear. Someone was hurt. I helped, but they didn't care. Ah, these people. The older woman's tone softened, but worry crept in. And your benefits? For Lila's medicine? Nora closed her eyes. That's what I'm scared about. The doctor said she needs another blood test in 2 weeks. If the iron levels drop again, her voice trailed off. The pills alone are $60 a bottle, and she finishes one every 2 weeks. Mrs. Ramirez clucked her tongue. Don't you worry about that, mi amor. We'll figure it out. God always finds a way. I'll find something new, Nora said quickly, almost to herself. A better job. Maybe something part-time until then. Better or worse, it will come, Mrs. Ramirez said. But you must rest tonight. No crying in front of Lila. That little girl feels everything. Nora managed a quiet, "Thank you," then hung up before the lump in her throat could turn into sobs. The bus groaned to a stop outside her building. An old brownstone squeezed between 2 convenience stores. She climbed the narrow stairs to their second-floor apartment. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and paint. She set the box down on the kitchen counter beside the unpaid electric bill. Then she sat, staring at the flickering digital clock on the microwave. It read 3:42 p.m. She could hear children laughing outside from the small playground across the street, a sound both comforting and cruel. When the door creaked open later that afternoon, Lila came skipping in, her school bag bouncing. "Mom!" she called, holding up a piece of paper. "Look what I made," Nora smiled automatically. "What is it, honey?" "It's you," Lila declared proudly. The drawing was of a woman in a red cape with a lunchbox shield and a golden crown made of stars. Above it, in large, shaky letters, "My mom is a hero." Nora swallowed hard. "A hero, huh?" "Yep. You help people, and you fix things, and you make pancakes better than Mrs. Ramirez." Nora laughed softly. "That's a pretty high compliment." She crouched to hug her daughter, inhaling the familiar scent of shampoo and crayons. Lila looked up, frowning. "Mom, your eyes are red. Did you get rain in them again?" "Something like that," Nora said, brushing the hair from her face. "I'm just tired, sweetheart. But guess what?" She forced cheer into her tone. "I'm going to find us an even better job. One where I can buy you new markers and maybe those strawberry vitamins you like." "Really? Really?" It wasn't a lie, not exactly. It was hope pretending to be certainty. As the evening settled, the apartment filled with the quiet rhythm of routine. Lila did her reading on the rug while Nora reheated leftovers. They watched an episode of Planet Earth together, Lila fascinated by penguins huddled against the Antarctic wind. When bedtime came, the little girl snuggled under her blanket and whispered, "Night, Mom. Don't worry. You'll find your new job tomorrow. You always fix things." Nora kissed her forehead. "I'll do my best." When the door clicked shut, the silence was deafening. She sat at the kitchen table, pulling out the small folder of bills she kept tucked inside a drawer. Rent, utilities, groceries, medicine, numbers bled into each other. Her savings account balance might keep them afloat for 3 weeks, maybe 4 if she skipped her own meals. Her hands trembled slightly as she wrote figures on a notepad. She circled Lila's medication twice, then stared at it until the ink smudged. The refrigerator hummed behind her. The only other light came from the cheap lamp above the table, casting a golden circle on the bills. She whispered to herself, "One day, Lila will never have to see me like this." Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the windows. Somewhere, a train horn echoed through the night. Her phone buzzed on the table. Nora ignored it at first, assuming it was another automated alert from the job site she'd signed up for weeks ago. But then she noticed the caller ID unknown number, Helios HQ. Her stomach flipped. She hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" "Good evening, Ms. Blake," said a calm, professional voice. "This is Monica Chen, executive assistant to Mr. Adrian Wells." Nora straightened instinctively. "Oh, hello, Ms. Chen. Is Mr. Wells okay?" "He's fine," Monica said with a faint smile audible through the line. "Recovering, but he specifically asked me to reach out. He'd like to meet with you tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. at the executive floor. I understand you're no longer with us, but he was quite insistent." Nora blinked, speechless. "Meet with him? At Helios?" "Yes. Would you be available?" Her heart hammered. "Yes, of course. Yes, I can be there." "Perfect. I'll make sure security has your name cleared for access. Thank you again for your help this morning, Ms. Blake. You made quite an impression." The call ended. Nora sat frozen, staring at her phone screen, the hum of the refrigerator suddenly deafening again. She wasn't sure if this was good news or the kind that came wrapped in polite formality. Was Adrian Wells going to thank her, or ensure she didn't cause trouble about what happened? A dozen worries raced through her mind, colliding with one tiny, flickering flame of possibility. She looked over at Lila's drawing taped to the wall, the one with the cape and the crown. For the first time that night, she smiled, faint but real. "Maybe heroes get second chances too," she whispered. Outside, the rain had stopped completely. The city lights shimmered off the wet pavement, and inside that small apartment, a phone screen still glowed softly with the words, "Incoming call, Helios HQ, Executive Office." The morning air bit with frost, and the city glittered under a pale blue sky. Nora stood outside her apartment door, her heart racing as she double-checked her bag for the third time. Resume, notebook, pen, a single hope tucked between them. Mrs. Ramirez stood nearby, handing her a folded $20 bill. "Take the car service, querida. No bus today. You'll arrive like a lady with purpose." Nora shook her head. "You already do too much for us." The older woman pressed the money into her hand. "When a door opens, don't limp through it. Walk in." Nora smiled faintly. "Then I guess I'll run." The car ride downtown felt longer than usual. She kept glancing at the skyline, at the shining Helios Tower that pierced the clouds like a blade of light. Every mile closer made her palms sweat a little more. At 8:45 a.m., she stepped out of the car, her reflection rippling in the mirrored glass of the building. Her navy blue dress, clean but modest, caught the morning light. She smoothed it nervously, whispered to herself, "Don't faint, don't stutter, just breathe." Inside, the marble lobby gleamed like ice. The security guard at the reception desk looked up as she approached. "Name?" he asked. "Nora Blake. I have a meeting with Mr. Adrian Wells." He typed quickly, paused, then nodded with a hint of surprise. "You are cleared for executive access, Ms. Blake. Take the elevator on the left." Nora blinked. "Executive access?" He smiled. "Yes, ma'am, all the way to the top floor." Her throat went dry. The executive elevator, the one she'd watched for months from across the lobby, its steel doors swallowing people who lived in a different world. Now it was opening for her. She stepped inside. The doors slid shut with a whisper, enclosing her in silence and warm amber light. The panel gleamed with only one button, E. The ride was smooth, too smooth. She felt her heart rising with the floor numbers until the chime rang, ding, and the doors opened onto a different universe. Monica Chen was waiting in a cream suit, her presence efficient, but not unkind. "Ms. Blake, good morning. Mr. Wells is expecting you." Nora followed her through a corridor lined with glass walls and artwork that looked like moving light. The end of the hall opened into a corner office that could have been a movie set, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Chicago River, sunlight pooling over walnut floors. And there he was. Adrian Wells sat in a sleek wheelchair near his desk, a cast on his leg propped carefully on a stool. The last time Nora saw him, he'd been pale, rain-soaked, and in pain. Now, even seated, he radiated calm authority, his presence somehow filling the room without effort. When he looked up, he smiled. Not the distant smile of a CEO, but something warm, genuine. "Ms. Blake, you made it." Nora swallowed hard, forcing composure. "Yes, sir. Thank you for seeing me." "Adrian," he corrected gently, "after yesterday, I think we can skip the formalities." She hesitated, then nodded. "Adrian," he gestured to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." She sat, gripping her bag in her lap like armor. He watched her for a moment, then said, "I wanted to thank you. Most people would have walked by. You didn't. That kind of instinct, to help without hesitation, tells me more about someone than a resume ever could." Nora's face flushed. "Anyone would have stopped." His expression softened. "No, I saw at least 4 people keep walking before you came. You're not anyone, Ms. Blake." Her breath caught. The words hung between them, kind, measured, disarming. Adrian leaned forward slightly, his tone shifting. "After the accident, I asked Monica to send me the personnel file of the woman who called 911. Imagine my surprise when I found out she worked here and was terminated the same morning." Nora's stomach tightened. You know about that." "I do," he said quietly. "And I know it was handled badly. Craig Doyle made a decision that doesn't reflect the company's values. You helped someone in need. That shouldn't cost you your job." She bit her lip. It's complicated. I've had to take a few early leaves because of my daughter's condition. Lila has anemia, and sometimes I... He raised a hand gently. Please, go on. So she did. About the mornings when Lila woke too weak for school. About the nights spent waiting in clinics, calculating the price of medicine versus groceries. About how she'd thought that this job might finally give them a steady life. When she finished, she was embarrassed by how much she'd said. I'm sorry. You didn't need my life story. Adrian shook his head. No, Nora, I did. Because it's people like you who remind me why I built Helios in the first place. He reached for a folder on his desk and slid it across to her. The cover read, Nora Blake, candidate, executive assistant, and Hope Initiative liaison. She blinked. What is this? A proposal, he said simply. 2 offers in one. He folded his hands. First, I want you to return to Helios, not as an admin in marketing, but as my executive assistant. You'll coordinate with department heads, manage my schedule, and help with operations. Nora stared at him. I've never done anything at that level. You'll learn, he replied. Monica will train you personally for the transition. You've already proven you can handle crisis better than most of my managers. And the second offer? She asked quietly. Adrian's eyes brightened. Helios Hope Initiative. It's a new foundation we're launching, focused on single parents and children with health issues caused by financial hardship. It's still on the ground floor. I need someone who understands what that struggle feels like. Nora's fingers tightened around the folder. Oh, you want me to... what, consult? More than that, Adrian said. Be its voice. Help us design programs that actually matter. The words sank in slowly, like sunlight spreading over frozen ground. It's generous, she whispered, but it feels like charity, because of what happened. Adrian leaned back, thoughtful. It's not charity, Nora. It's recognition. Yesterday I saw courage and empathy. Those qualities are what I want leading this company forward. For a moment, neither spoke. The hum of the city below filled the silence. Nora finally said, almost in disbelief, You're offering me 2 jobs. I'm offering you a chance, it corrected. A role that fits who you are, not just what your resume says. Her throat tightened. When would I start? A faint grin curved his lips. How's tomorrow? I could use someone to help me chase my calendar before it runs away again. She laughed. A quiet, shaky sound, half relief, half wonder. Tomorrow works, she said, smiling for the first time in days. But I'll warn you now, I make terrible coffee. Adrian chuckled. Good, I don't drink it. The room fell into a comfortable stillness, broken only by the city hum below. As she stood to leave, Adrian said softly, Nora, thank you for stopping that morning, for reminding me that empathy still has a place in business. She met his gaze and nodded. And thank you for proving it. When the elevator doors closed behind her, moments later, Nora let out a long, trembling breath. Somewhere between the ground floor and the sky, her life had shifted. She wasn't sure what tomorrow would bring, only that it would no longer be the same. The following morning began with a sunrise that felt almost symbolic. Pale light cutting through the clouds over the Chicago River as Nora stepped out of the car that Helios had sent for her. Her reflection in the lobby glass looked different today, still modest, still anxious, but with something new glinting in her eyes. Purpose. She'd said yes the night before. After hours of pacing the kitchen floor, her mind looping through the same question, could she really belong in his world? But when she saw Lila sleeping peacefully, cheeks no longer ghost pale, Nora knew the answer. She would do anything for that little girl's future. At exactly 9 a.m., Monica Chen greeted her at the executive reception with a clipboard and a calm smile. Welcome back, Ms. Blake. Or should I say, welcome up. Nora laughed nervously. I'm not sure which one sounds scarier. Both, depending on the day, Monica replied, leading her through the corridor. You'll be shadowing me this week. Adrian's schedule is complex, and managing it means learning the rhythm behind the chaos. They reached a smaller office adjacent to the CEO's. A large digital calendar glowed across one wall, color-coded blocks filling every hour. Nora stared. Please tell me that's not all today. Monica smirked. That's just before lunch. The next few days unfolded like a crash course in an entirely different language. She learned to navigate the sea of executives, each speaking in acronyms and forecasts. She typed minutes for board meetings she barely understood, coordinated with department heads who talked fast and smiled rarely, and sorted through emails that could shift millions of dollars with a single sentence. At first, it felt like walking barefoot through glass. Her old office had been a cramped maze of cubicles and budget charts. Here, everything gleamed. Chrome, glass, precision. Even conversations had polish. By the third day, she could anticipate Adrian's requests before Monica finished saying them. She adjusted his calendar to allow 10-minute breathers between investor calls, reordered travel routes, and learned how to decode his shorthand notes, like blue equals priority, red equals fire. Monica was firm but fair, the kind of mentor who corrected with kindness. Confidence is half of professionalism, Nora. The rest is preparation. Still, some moments stung. In the executive dining area one afternoon, while others ordered quinoa salads and imported espresso, Nora quietly unpacked her own lunch, a plain sandwich and the leftover soup she'd made for Lila the night before. She felt eyes on her, not unkind but curious, as though she'd walked in from another planet. Adrian entered mid-lunch, greeted everyone, then caught sight of her. Without hesitation, he sat at her table instead of the reserved one near the window. "How's the training going?" he asked. Nora swallowed her self-consciousness, learning to breathe underwater. "But I think I'm adjusting." "That's the hardest part," Adrian said, lowering his voice slightly. "You don't have to change who you are to fit this place. We need people who remind us why we're here, not just how to look like we belong." His tone was casual, but the words carried weight. The glances from nearby tables softened. For the first time, Nora felt less like an intruder and more like a participant. Later that week, in a quiet moment between meetings, Adrian shared something unexpected. They were reviewing files for the Helios Hope initiative when he paused, looking at a childhood photo that had been used in a presentation slide. 2 boys at a small-town playground, one holding a soccer ball. "That's me and my brother," he said. "Eli. He got sick when we were kids, malnutrition. Not from neglect, just bad luck and bad timing. Our parents lost their jobs, couldn't afford the right food or treatment. He recovered, mostly, but the experience stayed with me." Nora looked up, surprised by the openness in his voice. "I didn't know." "Most don't," he replied. "Sabrina, my ex-wife, used to say I let the past guide too much of the present. But sometimes the past is what teaches you where to aim your efforts." He gestured toward the stack of foundation proposals. "That's why this initiative matters. Nutrition, access, education. It's not charity, it's prevention." Nora nodded, moved. "Lila's doctor says the same thing. Prevention isn't glamorous, but it saves lives quietly." Adrian smiled. "Exactly. That's why I need your insight here. You've lived what the numbers never show." That evening, back at her desk, Nora worked late drafting her first proposal outline for Helios Hope. Her handwriting curved slowly across the page as she thought through real-world struggles. Single parents choosing between rent and groceries, kids fainting in classrooms, pantry shelves empty by midweek. When she handed Adrian the draft the next morning, she apologized in advance. "It's not polished, just ideas." He flipped through the pages. The first bullet read, "Fresh food vouchers, partnerships with local grocers to subsidize produce for low-income families." The second, nutritional counseling, short online sessions for single parents balancing work and health. The third, simple meals initiative, free weekend classes teaching affordable, nutrient-dense recipes. Adrian looked up. "You wrote all this last night?" She shrugged. "It's just what I wish existed when things were hardest. Practical, immediate, human," he murmured, tapping his pen against the table. "You realize you just outlined the Foundation's pilot program?" Nora blinked. "I did?" He nodded, smiling. "You did, and it's good. Very good." Monica, standing nearby, chimed in with her dry humor. "You've officially joined the ranks of those who create more work for the rest of us." They all laughed, but Nora's chest filled with something new, something she hadn't felt since before the hospital bills and overtime shifts. Pride. That afternoon, in a small conference room overlooking the skyline, Nora presented her draft to a handful of department heads. Her voice trembled at first, but Adrian's steady gaze anchored her. When she clicked to the slide titled Helios Hope, Pilot, Programs, the room quieted. She spoke not like a polished executive, but like a mother who had lived every statistic on the page. Families like mine don't need charity, she said softly. They need tools, a bridge between what they can afford and what their children deserve. When she finished, silence lingered. Then came the soft clap of hands. Monica was smiling. Adrian was taking notes, his expression unreadable but proud. As she left the meeting, Nora caught her reflection in the glass wall. The same woman, same simple dress, but standing taller. For the first time in years, she didn't just feel like she was surviving. She was building something that mattered. 4 months can change a life completely. The gray apartment with flickering lights and thin walls had become a memory. Now, sunlight spilled every morning into a modest but bright new home near Lincoln Park, a space that smelled of toast and watercolors. Lila had her own desk by the window, where she painted tiny galaxies and charts of planets. The doctor had smiled at their last visit, noting her improved blood levels. "She's strong now, Mrs. Blake. Keep doing whatever you're doing." Whatever she was doing had a name, Helios, and it had reshaped everything. Each morning, the black Helios car arrived at 7:40 sharp. Nora would slide into the back seat beside Adrian, her tablet already open to review the day's agenda. By now, she knew his rhythm as if it were music. When he needed silence before a negotiation, when he had wanted an espresso at precisely 2:30, when to block a thinking hour that others constantly tried to steal. "Reschedule Weller's meeting to next week," she'd murmur as they crossed the bridge. "You have 10 minutes of quiet before the board briefing." He'd glance up from his laptop, faint smile tugging his lips. "You read my mind?" "That's my job," she'd reply, and they'd both laugh softly, the sound of two people who had learned to navigate chaos together. By the 3rd month, department heads stopped referring to Nora as the assistant and began calling her the bridge. She coordinated engineering deadlines with marketing launches, investor dinners with foundation meetings. She was no longer the woman running after buses in the rain. She was the one being driven to rooftop boardrooms, her voice carrying weight in conversations she'd once only overheard. And yet, she hadn't lost herself. Her desk still held a photo of Lila and a small cactus that had stubbornly survived every season, a quiet symbol that resilience could bloom anywhere. The Helios Hope initiative had grown faster than anyone predicted. What began as a concept sketch was now a functioning network, connecting nutritionists, clinics, and grocery partners. They were days away from signing a national partnership with Metro Fresh, one of the largest supermarket chains in the country, a deal that would allow Helios Hope to distribute food vouchers to families in need. That night's dinner would finalize it. Adrian insisted Nora attend. "You've built half this program," he said, standing by her desk as she reviewed logistics. "They need to see the person behind the ideas." Nora hesitated. "I don't exactly blend in at dinners where the cheapest wine costs more than my old rent." "Then don't blend in," he said simply. "Stand out. That's the point." The restaurant, Il Cerchio, glowed like a dream from another life. Crystal chandeliers hung low over linen-draped tables. Soft jazz floated through the air. Candles flickered inside glass cylinders. Nora smoothed the sleeve of her dark green dress, simple but elegant, the one Monica had insisted she borrow from the company's event wardrobe. "Power without flash," Monica had said. The maitre d' led them to a private dining room where Richard Langford, CEO of Metro Fresh, waited with 2 of his senior partners. Langford was silver-haired, tanned, and carried the kind of smile that said he was used to being admired. "Adrian Wells," he greeted, shaking hands warmly. "Glad to see you back on your feet." Adrian chuckled, tapping his cane lightly. "Almost there. This is Nora Blake, my executive assistant and the program director for the Helios Hope initiative." Langford raised an eyebrow. "Program director and assistant? That's quite a combination." Nora smiled evenly. "It helps when both jobs share the same purpose, making sure good ideas survive reality." Langford's grin widened. "I like that." They sat, Adrian at the head of the table, Nora to his right. Dishes began to arrive. Antipasto, risotto, the kind of food that came with waiters who spoke in gentle whispers. Conversation flowed through polite channels, projections, logistics, cost efficiency. Nora listened, quietly observing the subtle dance of tone and timing that Adrian handled with effortless control. Then Langford turned to her mid-discussion. "Ms. Blake, Adrian tells me you've been designing the rollout strategy. Tell me, How do you plan to manage the chaos of feeding thousands of families without collapsing under your own ambition? It wasn't a hostile question, but it carried that test of fire tone seasoned businessmen used. Nora met his gaze steadily. By starting smaller than we dream and growing faster than we fear. Langford chuckled. Meaning, she continued, we phase it. 3 pilot cities, 6 months each. Measure data before scaling. We'll partner with local stores, not just Metro Fresh locations, so distribution isn't centralized. It's community-driven. You can't fight food insecurity from a spreadsheet. You have to meet it at the checkout counter. A flicker of intrigue crossed Langford's face. One of his partners leaned forward. That's smart, adaptive. Nora nodded. And transparent. Every voucher is traceable through our app. No fraud, no waste. Families earn points by attending nutrition workshops, so education becomes part of the system. For a moment, silence hung. The good kind. Then Langford exhaled. I have to admit, Ms. Blake, that's sharper thinking than I've heard from most of our consultants. Adrian smiled faintly. That's because she doesn't think like a consultant. Langford laughed, raising his glass. Then she's worth her weight in gold. They clinked glasses, and dinner resumed with a lighter mood. Nora relaxed slightly, her pulse slowing, as she realized she'd done more than survive the evening. She'd won it. After dessert, Langford leaned back, content. We'll increase our initial funding by 20%, he said casually, on the condition that Ms. Blake oversees the pilot phase directly. Adrian blinked. You're serious? Completely. She clearly understands what this needs to succeed. Nora nearly protested, but Adrian spoke first. Then it settled. Langford grinned. To new beginnings. As they toasted again, Adrian leaned toward her, voice low. I told you not to blend in. She smiled, a quiet, private smile. Remind me to listen to you more often. Outside, snow had begun to fall, soft, feathery flakes drifting past the street lamps. The valet brought the car around, and as they waited under the canopy, Adrian looked at her. You know, he said, 4 months ago you were standing in the rain, holding a cardboard box. And tonight, you just negotiated a national partnership. Nora laughed under her breath. When you say it like that, it sounds impossible. It sounded impossible to everyone but you. The car pulled up, its headlights glowing through the snow. As she stepped inside, Nora glanced back at the restaurant, at the shimmering windows where her reflection blended with the city lights. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't look distant. It looked like something she was already walking toward. Success has a way of drawing both light and shadow. By early spring, Nora Blake's name had quietly become part of Helios's daily vocabulary. Executives mentioned her in meetings, department heads sought her input, interns whispered her story like a corporate legend. And with every whisper came its echo. She's lucky, someone would murmur by the espresso machine. Saved the CEO and landed a promotion. Right place, right time. Others lowered their voices but sharpened their tone. Single mom, right? Figures. People eat that narrative up. Nora tried not to listen. She buried herself in work, in schedules, budgets, drafts for Helios Hope's upcoming gala. But words had a way of slipping through walls. Once in the elevator, she caught 2 junior managers talking. She must be close to Wells. Did you see them at the Metro Fresh dinner? Yeah, she looked comfortable. Comfortable or strategic. The doors opened, and they went silent when they saw her. She stepped out calmly, but her chest burned. Later that day, Monica Chen caught her in the hallway. Ignore the noise, Monica advised. You don't need to explain excellence to people who fear it. Nora smiled faintly. I'm trying. But late at night, when the office emptied and the city lights flickered through the glass walls, those words echoed in her mind. Comfortable or strategic? Adrian noticed her distraction long before she said anything. They had fallen into a rhythm over the months. Shared coffee at 7, strategy meetings till 5, quiet planning sessions after everyone else had gone home. What began as professional efficiency had evolved into something more personal, though neither dared to name it. Sometimes they stayed in his office long after dark, discussing the foundation's next phase while the skyline glowed behind them. The conversations always drifted, from work to childhood, from fears to unspoken dreams. One evening, Adrian set aside his notes, rolling his recovering ankle slowly. You know, he said, I used to think solitude was strength. The fewer people you rely on, the less you can lose. Nora looked up from her laptop. And now? He smiled faintly. Now, I think solitude is just another kind of hunger. You stop noticing it until someone reminds you what warmth feels like. Her heart skipped. That's poetic for a businessman. He leaned back in his chair. Businessmen write poetry too, just with fewer metaphors. She laughed quietly, though the air between them had grown heavier. The glow from his desk lamp cast a soft halo on his face. He looked tired, but alive in a way she hadn't seen before. Their eyes met, and for a second, the hum of the city outside fell away. Adrian opened his mouth to say something, his voice low, almost uncertain. "Nora, have you ever thought that maybe what's happening here is—" A sharp buzz from his phone cut him off. He checked the screen, his expression hardening. "I have to take this. It's the Westridge contract. I'm sorry." Nora nodded, masking disappointment with professionalism. "Go ahead." He turned his chair toward the window, voice shifting into executive mode. She gathered her notes quietly and slipped out before he could end the call. For 3 days, things stayed suspended. Their conversations stayed polite, efficient, distant. He didn't finish his sentence, and she didn't ask him to. Then, on the 4th afternoon, Monica appeared at Nora's desk, her usual calm replaced by a flicker of unease. "Heads up," she said in a low voice. "Sabrina Hayes is here." Nora blinked. "Who?" "Adrian's ex-wife." The words landed like cold water. "She just walked in. No appointment. Said it's personal." Nora's pulse stuttered. She watched as Monica led a tall, elegant woman through the glass corridor toward Adrian's office. Sabrina's presence filled the space before she even spoke. Tailored suit, polished heels, a composure carved from years of courtroom confidence. Nora caught her reflection in the glass. Simple blouse, hair pinned loosely, a folder clutched too tightly in her hands. Suddenly, she felt like the kid who had shown up to the wrong classroom. From her vantage point near the corner, she could see inside Adrian's office. Not hear, but see. Sabrina greeted him with a cool familiarity, a kiss on the cheek that spoke of history rather than intimacy. Adrian stood, offering a polite but restrained smile. They began talking, their postures civil yet cautious. Through the glass, they looked almost cinematic, two people framed by power and memory, the skyline behind them shimmering like a backdrop from another era. Nora's throat tightened. She turned away, pretending to focus on her papers, but curiosity, or maybe pain, pulled her gaze back. Sabrina's expression shifted from professional to personal. She leaned forward slightly, her hand brushing the desk. Adrian didn't recoil, but his smile dimmed, the kind of half-smile people wear when facing a ghost they once loved. Nora could almost read the scene. Sabrina explaining she was relocating to Chicago, her law firm expanding, old wounds healing, maybe hinting, subtly, gracefully, that the reasons they had separated no longer mattered. She didn't need to hear it to know. She saw it in Sabrina's ease, in the way she occupied the space that Nora always entered carefully. Her heart pounded. The file in her hands bent slightly as she gripped it too hard. Monica walked past and gave her a small, understanding look, but Nora only whispered, "I'm fine," and hurried toward the elevators. That night, Nora sat by the window of her apartment, watching the city lights blur through the glass. Lila was asleep, her soft breathing steady from the bedroom. Nora's reflection stared back. The same woman who had stood in that rain months ago, holding a stranger's hand, believing kindness alone could change her fate. Now, standing next to him felt like standing too close to the sun, warm, bright, and a little too dangerous. She whispered to herself, "You don't belong in that world, Nora." Her phone buzzed. A text from Adrian. "You left early today. Everything okay?" Her fingers hovered over the screen before typing back. "Yes. Just had things to finish at home. Hope your meeting went well." She hit send, then turned the phone face down. Somewhere across the city, in his glass tower, Adrian stared at the same message, wondering why the warmth between them suddenly felt like distance. Neither of them knew how easily one unexpected visitor could build a wall higher than any corporate floor. That evening, when Sabrina's perfume still lingered faintly in the air of the executive floor, Nora told Monica she had to leave early. "Lila's project due tomorrow," she said with a practiced calm that fooled no one. The truth was simpler and far heavier. She couldn't stand the thought of walking past Adrian's office again. By the time she reached home, Chicago had turned gold and violet, traffic lights glowing through mist, car horns fading into the hum of night. Lila was sprawled on the couch, pencil in hand, working on her science homework with the serious concentration of a surgeon. "Mom, did you know that red blood cells live only 4 months?" Nora smiled faintly. "Then yours are brand new." Lila grinned, proud of her progress. When the girl's eyelids started to droop, Nora helped her swallow her iron supplement, brushed her hair aside, and kissed her forehead. "Sleep, my brave little scientist," she whispered. Then she stepped onto the balcony. The air was cold, just enough to sting. Below, a school. Headlights smeared across wet asphalt, forming rivers of light. Nora wrapped her cardigan tighter, staring down at the endless flow of people and cars, everyone moving, everyone chasing something. She thought about that look Adrian had given her weeks ago, the words he almost said, and the elegant shadow of Sabrina standing in his office earlier that day. How many invisible lines had she crossed without noticing? A glance held too long, a laugh that meant too much, a kindness that went both ways. Her phone buzzed against the railing. "Adrian, you left suddenly. Are you okay, Adrian?" Sabrina's visit was unexpected. It meant nothing. "She's the past, Nora. Please don't misunderstand." She stared at the screen, her thumb hovering above the keyboard. Then she typed slowly. "Nora, everything's fine. Just needed to take care of family things." The lie wasn't elegant, but it was safe. A minute later, the phone lit up again. "Adrian, family things are the most important. Just promise me you won't disappear again." She smiled bitterly. Too late, she thought, slipping the phone back into her pocket. The city stretched before her, bright, indifferent, alive. Somewhere among its reflections, she saw her own silhouette, caught between courage and retreat. 3 days passed like that, polite messages, careful distance, and the quiet ache of what hadn't been said. Then, one Saturday morning, a package arrived at her door. Inside was a garment box with a note in Adrian's handwriting. "For the Helios Hope Gala. I thought this might suit you better than company black and white. Thank you for everything you've built. A.W." Nora hesitated before lifting the lid. The dress inside was simple yet elegant. Soft, gray-blue satin that shimmered faintly under the light. Not extravagant, but thoughtful. A color that seemed chosen for her. She traced the fabric with her fingertips, her heart pulling between gratitude and something dangerously close to longing. "Mom!" Lila's voice chimed from the hallway. "Can I come in?" "Of course," Nora said, forcing brightness into her tone. Lila padded in, wearing bunny slippers and holding her box of crayons. The girl stopped mid-step, eyes widening as she saw the dress reflected in the mirror. "Whoa," Nora laughed. "It's not that special." "It is," Lila insisted, circling her like a tiny art critic. "You look like one of those ladies in the movies who gets to go somewhere important." "Well, it's for the Helios Hope event. Remember? The big dinner for all the people helping with the program." Lila nodded sagely. "Is Mr. Adrian going too?" "Of course," Nora said, adjusting the strap on her shoulder. "He's the one running it." Lila climbed onto the bed, folding her legs. "He likes you." Nora blinked. "What?" The little girl said it as casually as if announcing the weather. "Mr. Adrian likes you. I know." Nora turned slowly from the mirror. "Sweetheart, why do you think that?" "Because he asked me." Nora froze. "Asked you what, exactly?" Lila tilted her head, choosing her words with the grave importance only a 7-year-old could muster. "He said he wanted to know if it would be okay with me if he took you to the movies one day, and maybe for pizza after. He said he wouldn't ask you unless I said yes first." The air seemed to tilt for a second. Nora sat down on the edge of the bed. "He asked you that?" "Uh-huh. When he took me to the museum for the robots thing, remember? You were in a meeting." Lila frowned. "I said it was okay as long as he didn't make you cry, like Dad did." Nora's throat tightened. "Oh, Lila," the girl shrugged. "He said he'd never do that." For a moment, the room felt full of warmth and confusion at once. The kind that comes when your heart catches up to something your mind has been denying. Nora reached for her daughter's hand. "Thank you for telling me, sweetheart." "Are you mad?" "No," Nora said softly. "Just surprised." "Do you like him too?" Lila asked, eyes wide, hopeful. Nora hesitated. In the mirror, her reflection looked different, softer, braver, and a little more afraid. "I don't know yet," she whispered, "but maybe that's something I should find out." Later that afternoon, during the final rehearsal for the Helios Hope Gala, Nora walked through the Grand Meridian Ballroom, now draped in silver banners and soft light. The stage crew tested microphones while servers adjusted centerpieces. Adrian was already there, speaking with the event director, his suit jacket off, sleeves rolled. When he saw her, his expression changed. Relief first, then something gentler. "Nora," he said, crossing the floor toward her, "I wasn't sure you'd come." "I had to make sure the technical cues were in order," she replied evenly. He smiled. "Of course." They stood side by side, watching the screens flash the Helios Hope logo, a golden sunrise above the words, "Nutrition, health, and hope for every child." Adrian's voice lowered. "I wanted to say thank you again, for staying, for everything you've done." Nora turned slightly, the faintest tremor in her voice. "And for the dress?" He chuckled softly. "And for the dress." For a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then the event coordinator called for her attention, breaking the spell. Nora nodded and moved toward the stage, clipboard in hand. But as she walked, she could still feel Adrian's gaze. Following her, quiet and unspoken, like a promise waiting for the right moment to be said aloud. The Grand Meridian Ballroom was alive with quiet motion. Staff adjusted the lighting, tested microphones, and arranged elegant rows of white and gold chairs beneath a crystal chandelier the size of a small car. The scent of polished wood and fresh lilies filled the air. At the center of it all stood Nora, clutching a few typed pages. The Helios Hope Gala, the moment they had worked toward for months, was only one night away. Monica's voice echoed through the sound system. "Whenever you're ready, Nora." Nora inhaled slowly. "Okay, let's try this one last time." She walked to the podium, the stage lights soft on her face. The screens behind her glowed with the Helios Hope logo. Nutrition, health, dignity. Her hands trembled slightly, but her voice, once she began, was steady. "When my daughter Lila was 2, she said, I learned how to make half a bottle of milk feed her for a full night. You mix water, just enough to trick yourself into thinking it's still strong enough. It's not, of course. You know it's not. But when you're a single mother between paychecks, you start believing in small miracles." The room stilled. "I used to walk past grocery aisles wishing I could buy more greens, more fruit, more iron supplements. Anything that could stop the dizzy spells that made my little girl sit down mid-step. I used to tell her, the world only spins that fast when you're brave." Nora paused. Her throat tightened. She caught Monica wiping her eyes near the back row. "I never thought I'd be here. Part of something that could make sure no parent ever has to dilute milk again. That's what Helios Hope means to me. It's not charity, it's a promise that no family should have to choose between rent and nutrition, between medicine and dignity." When she finished, there was silence, then applause. A few team members were crying outright. The sound technician muttered, "That's gonna make donors melt." Nora laughed softly, embarrassed, brushing away a tear she hadn't realized was there. Adrian had watched from the far end of the room, arms crossed. His expression was unreadable, pride, admiration, and something else behind his eyes. When the rehearsal ended and everyone drifted out for lunch, he remained. "Nora," he said quietly, when she started packing up her notes. She looked up. "Yes, Mr. Wells?" He smiled faintly. "We're past Mr. Wells, don't you think?" She hesitated. "Right. Adrian?" He stepped closer, his cane tapping lightly against the marble floor. The vast ballroom felt strangely intimate now, echoing only their voices and the distant hum of an air vent. "You've been avoiding me," he said simply. Nora's breath caught. He held up a hand. "It's okay. I get it. Sabrina's visit complicated things." Her eyes dropped. "I shouldn't have assumed anything. It wasn't my place." "It was your place," he said firmly, "because it affected you, and because you deserve the truth." She glanced up, startled by the seriousness in his tone. Adrian exhaled, resting a hand on the edge of a chair. "Sabrina and I divorced 3 years ago. We wanted different lives. She believes love should never require sacrifice, especially not for a family. I believe a family is worth every sacrifice." He paused, the confession raw and unvarnished. "I wanted children. She didn't. We spent years trying to meet in the middle, and in doing so, we both lost our balance." Nora's eyes softened. "I thought maybe she wanted to come back, that you might." Adrian shook his head. "Sabrina's world spins at a speed I can't keep up with anymore. She came to say she's moving back for work, that's all." He took a step closer. "But you You're the one who reminded me why I wanted a family in the first place. Not the picture-perfect version, the real kind. The kind where you burn toast and still laugh. The kind where you fight to give a child a better breakfast than you had yesterday. Nora's chest ached with the weight of his words. Adrian, she began. He smiled faintly. You and Lila changed how I see the world. You didn't just save me that morning. You showed me what it means to care without asking for anything in return. Somewhere between strategy meetings and late-night calls, I started thinking about us. The word hung between them, fragile, unspoken, finally said. He took another step, their distance now a breath apart. I don't want to make this harder for you, Nora. I know what it means to cross lines, but I can't keep pretending I don't feel. The ballroom door swung open. A cart squeaked in. Excuse me, a hotel staff member called cheerfully. Champagne delivery for the gala set up. The moment shattered. Adrian straightened, clearing his throat. Nora turned quickly, pretending to look for her notes. The staff rolled past, humming as bottles clinked softly in their metal trays. When the doors shut again, silence returned. Awkward this time, like the echo of something left unfinished. Nora clutched her speech papers. We should probably finish this conversation later, Adrian said at the same time. They both stopped, sharing a small, rueful smile. Tomorrow night, he said softly. After the gala. No interruptions this time. Nora nodded, though her pulse was still racing. Tomorrow night. He watched her for a moment longer before turning toward the exit. As he reached the doorway, he looked back, his voice barely above a whisper. You were extraordinary up there, Nora. Not just as a speaker, as a person. And then he was gone, leaving her standing under the stage lights that still glowed faintly, illuminating the empty room like a promise waiting to be fulfilled. That evening, as Nora hung the gray-blue dress by her window, she caught her reflection again. The woman who once feared losing everything now caught between hope and uncertainty. Tomorrow would decide more than just the future of Helios Hope. It might decide the future of her own. The ballroom shimmered like a dream reborn. Golden lights cascaded from the chandeliers, glinting against mirrored walls and the white marble floor. Elegant music floated through the air, strings weaving softly beneath the hum of conversation and the clinking of glasses. At the center of it all, Nora Blake stood by the entrance, trying to calm her heartbeat. The gray-blue gown Adrian had chosen for her caught the light like calm water, understated, graceful, yet impossible to ignore. Across the room, Adrian Wells was speaking to a group of donors, his tuxedo sharp, his movements steady despite the subtle cane he carried instead of crutches. He looked nothing like the man who had once been sprawled on a rain-slick sidewalk. Tonight, he carried a different kind of strength, quiet, grounded, real. When their eyes met across the sea of guests, something wordless passed between them, an understanding, a promise unspoken. Ms. Blake, said the event director, touching her arm, you're up in 5. Nora nodded, exhaling slowly. She looked once more toward Adrian. He raised his glass in silent encouragement. Then she walked to the stage. The applause quieted as she reached the podium. Cameras adjusted. The logo, Helios Hope, glowed behind her in gold and silver. Good evening, Nora began, her voice calm, warm. My name is Nora Blake. I stand here tonight not as a success story, but as a mother who once had to choose between milk and medicine. The room stilled instantly. She continued, her tone even but laced with emotion. When my daughter Lila was little, I'd measure her milk carefully, half for morning, half for night. I'd tell her that superheroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear hand-me-down shoes and carry grocery bags heavier than they can afford. And when she asked if we were poor, I told her no. We just hadn't found our enough yet. A soft murmur moved through the crowd. Tonight, Helios Hope stands for families like ours, for parents who stay up doing math at the kitchen table, not for taxes or profits, but to see if they can stretch one more meal into the week, for children whose bodies are hungry and whose dreams deserve to grow anyway. Her voice trembled slightly, but she didn't pause. We can't change every story overnight, but we can make sure no mother waters down milk to fill her child's stomach. That's what this initiative means. It's hope, not as a slogan, but as something you can taste, hold, and believe in. She looked toward Adrian, who stood near the back now, watching her with quiet pride. Helios Hope is not his dream alone, she said. It's ours, built by every person who believes that dignity and nourishment belong to everyone, not just the fortunate few. When she finished, the ballroom erupted in applause. Not polite, but thunderous. Guests rose to their feet. Some wiped tears discreetly. Others clapped until their palms flushed pink. Adrian's eyes gleamed as he joined the ovation. The foundation had just become more than a company project. It had become a movement. An hour later, the energy had softened. Laughter and champagne drifted like the last notes of a song. Donors mingled near the dessert tables, and photographers packed up their cameras. Nora stood near the registration desk, finally letting herself breathe. The sound of applause still echoed faintly in her ears. Speechless, for once, she turned. Adrian stood a few feet away, holding 2 glasses of champagne. He offered one with a smile. "You were magnificent," he said quietly. Nora shook her head. "You made this possible. I just told my story." He studied her for a moment, then said, "That's exactly what made it powerful. It was real." They moved to a quieter corner of the lobby, near the large poster that read, Helios Hope Gala, a new dawn. Behind them, the last guests were filtering out through glass doors. For a long moment, neither spoke. Then Adrian broke the silence. "Nora, I owe you more than thanks tonight." She looked up, wary. "You don't owe me anything." "I do," he said gently. "Not for the project, for the truth." He set his glass down on the table beside them. "I tried to wait until after the gala, but watching you up there tonight, I realized waiting isn't courage. It's fear." Her heart thudded once, hard. "Nora," he said, his voice steady but quiet, "I'm in love with you." The words landed softly, but carried the weight of everything they had been holding back. Every late-night call, every glance across a meeting table, every moment of near confession. She froze, unable to breathe. "I need you to know," he continued. "It's not gratitude. It's not about that morning in the rain or the job. It's every choice you've made since. The way you protect your time with Lila, the way you stand your ground in meetings full of people twice your rank, the way you make this company human again." Nora stared at the floor, then back at him. "You can't say that, Adrian. Not when you're my CEO. People will twist it. They already talk." "I know," he said, "and that's why I've thought it through." She blinked. "Thought what through?" He smiled faintly, the calm, precise expression she'd seen when he presented new strategies to the board. "A restructure. Starting next quarter, Helios Hope will report directly to the board, not to me. You'll remain director, but Monica will handle the administrative support side. You'll have independence, transparency. No one can call it favoritism." Her mouth opened slightly. "You'd do that? I already filed the draft with legal," he said softly. "I don't want us to be defined by power or rank. I want this, whatever it becomes, to start on equal ground." The chandelier light reflected in his eyes, turning them almost silver. "Adrian," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you can't just rearrange the company because of me." "I can," he said simply, "because it's the right thing, for both of us." Her laughter came out shaky, half disbelief, half awe. "You realize you're rewriting corporate policy for a love story?" He smiled. "Then let's make it one worth the paperwork." For a moment, the world seemed to shrink to the space between them. The hum of the chandeliers, the faint music from the next room, and the quiet thrum of her pulse in her ears. "People will still talk," she murmured. "Let them," he said. "Truth speaks louder." She looked up at him then, really looked, and realized that every fear she'd carried, every doubt about belonging, had already begun to dissolve in the warmth of his gaze. "I don't know where this leads," she said softly. "Neither do I," he replied, "but I know who I want to find it with." He lifted his glass again, and she did the same. Their hands brushed. "To new beginnings," he said. Nora's smile trembled but held, "and to honest ones." The morning after the gala felt strangely quiet, as if the city itself was taking a breath. For Helios, however, silence was an illusion. By 8 a.m., the company's internal chat buzzed non-stop. Messages, reposts, news links. "Helios Hope Gala stuns with emotional impact," one headline read. A single mother's story inspires national donors, another declared. But beneath the praise came the whispers. A blog headline caught Nora's eye as she sipped her coffee at her desk. CEOs muse. Rumors swirl around Adrian Wells and Nora Blake, the former assistant turned foundation director. Her stomach dropped. The comments section was worse. Of course she got promoted. Cry a little, tell a sob story, get a corner office. Helios Hope? More like Helios Romance. She shut the laptop before she could scroll further. It shouldn't matter, she told herself. She had expected this. Yet, as the hum of the office rose outside her glass door, she couldn't ignore the sting. Her chest felt tight, the air suddenly too thin. A soft knock sounded. Monica leaned in, holding 2 lattes. I saw the articles, she said gently. People will always talk, Nora, but what they can't fake is your work. You earned every bit of it. Nora forced a small smile. I know, it's just tiring to see it written out loud. Monica nodded. Give it a week. Scandals get old faster than sincerity. But it took less than a day for something else to remind Nora what really mattered. At 2:17 p.m., her phone rang, a number she knew by heart. It was Mrs. Patel, Lila's teacher. Mrs. Blake, please don't panic, the voice said quickly. But Lila fainted during recess. We've called an ambulance. She's awake now, just dizzy. They're taking her to St. Mary's for observation. For a heartbeat, the world tilted. I'm on my way, Nora said, already grabbing her coat. Her keys slipped from trembling fingers. She sprinted through the glass lobby, barely hearing Monica's startled call behind her. By the time she reached the hospital, Lila was in a pediatric room, hooked to a small IV line. Her cheeks were pale, lips slightly dry, but she smiled weakly when she saw her mother. Mommy, I'm okay, she whispered. Nora sank into the chair beside her, taking the tiny hand in both of hers. You scared me, Peanut, the nurse explained gently. Her blood sugar and hemoglobin dropped again. Nothing critical, but she's exhausted. We'll run tests and keep her a few hours for observation. Nora nodded numbly. The steady beeping of the monitor filled the silence. The door opened behind her. Adrian walked in. Still in his suit from a board meeting, his tie slightly undone, his expression unreadable, until he saw Lila. How is she? He asked quietly. Nora blinked. You're here. You had your strategy call. I canceled it, he said simply. This is more important. He moved to the opposite side of the bed and crouched down beside the little girl. Hey, kiddo, heard you gave everyone quite a scare? Lila managed a faint grin. Guess I wanted to skip math today. He chuckled softly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. Fair enough, but next time, let's just fake a headache, okay? For hours, he stayed, sitting in the uncomfortable plastic chair, listening to doctors, taking notes, running down to the cafeteria for warm soup that Lila barely sipped. He didn't check his phone once. When the doctor returned with test results, Adrian listened as carefully as if the words were investment figures. She's improving, the doctor said, but she needs more rest and balanced iron intake. The condition isn't alarming, just requires consistency and less physical strain. Nora exhaled, a weight lifting from her chest. Thank you, she whispered. As the doctor left, Adrian looked across the bed at her. You're handling everything alone. That's not sustainable. Nora smiled tiredly. It's life. You adapt. You shouldn't have to do it alone, he said softly. Their eyes met over the white sheets. Two people who had both built walls out of necessity, now sitting in a place where those walls didn't matter. That night, when they finally brought Lila home, she was groggy but cheerful. Can I still have pancakes tomorrow? She mumbled. We'll see what Dr. Patel says, Nora teased, tucking her in. Within minutes, the child drifted into steady sleep. Nora turned off the lamp and found Adrian still sitting at the kitchen table, his jacket draped over a chair, sleeves rolled up. He looked up as she entered, his face lit by the soft amber glow of the stove light. I made tea, he said. It's terrible, but it's warm. She smiled faintly and joined him. The quiet between them was the kind that asked to be kept. Thank you, she said finally, for dropping everything today. You don't have to thank me. I do, she insisted. You didn't just show up, you stayed. That means more than you know. He leaned back, studying her. When I saw her there, I realized something. What's that? That all the titles, the meetings, the noise, they mean nothing if the people who matter aren't okay. You reminded me of that months ago. Today just carved it deeper. Nora looked down at her mug. You know, when the gossip articles came out this morning, I thought maybe this, whatever we're trying to build, wasn't worth the trouble. But sitting there in that hospital, I didn't think about headlines or reputations. Just her. And you, sitting across from me. That's what mattered. Adrian nodded slowly. Then maybe that's what we protect. Not the noise, not the optics, just the truth. She hesitated, then said, if we're really doing this, I want it open. No secrets. We tell the board, the team, professionally, transparently. No one gets to twist what's real. His smile was soft, proud. Agreed. I'll have HR and the board brief prepared tomorrow. Monica can transition into handling the administrative side of your role. Helios Hope will stand on its own. No favoritism, no questions. Nora exhaled, relief and resolve mixing together. People will still talk. Let them, he said again, that calm certainty returning. We'll answer them with work that speaks louder. She laughed quietly. You make it. Sounds simple. He glanced toward the bedroom door, where a soft nightlight glowed behind it. It is, at least the important part. Nora followed his gaze. Lila's okay. That's all I needed today. Adrian looked back at her, his voice low. She's lucky to have you. Nora shook her head. No, we're lucky to have you. For a moment, the world outside didn't exist. Only the warmth of 2 cups of tea, the steady hum of the city, and the quiet promise of a man who chose to stay when it mattered most. The first snow of winter came quietly, as if the city had been holding its breath. From her office window at Helios Hope, Nora watched the flakes drift past the glass, slow, steady, weightless. Chicago looked softer under white, its noise muffled, its sharp edges blurred. The past few weeks had been a blur of their own. Helios Hope's food voucher program had officially launched in 3 neighborhoods. The pilot phase was working, stores were stocked, families were smiling, and photos of children with grocery bags filled with fresh produce covered the foundation's bulletin board. And through all the chaos, Nora felt something she hadn't in years. Calm. At home, Lila was eating better, laughing louder. The pale circles under her eyes had faded, replaced by the rosy glow of a healthy child. Most evenings, she'd sit by the living room window with her crayons, sketching pictures of the 3 of us, as she called them. Herself, her mom, and a tall man with a kind smile. Is that supposed to be Mr. Adrian? Nora had teased one night. Lila had nodded solemnly. He belongs in the picture. You both do. Nora hadn't argued. That Friday night, the community center was alive with volunteers. Tables of canned food, boxes of produce, and stacks of the new Helios vouchers filled the hall. Nora oversaw logistics while Adrian spoke with a group of donors near the stage. He looked different these days. Still the CEO, still composed, but gentler around the edges. His laughter came easier. His shoulders no longer carried the invisible armor she remembered from their early days together. When the event wrapped up close to 9 p.m., most volunteers headed home to escape the cold. Outside, snow had begun falling in earnest, fat flakes swirling under the streetlights. Adrian turned to Nora as she zipped her coat. Let me drive you home. She nodded, too tired to protest. Lila, bundled in her red hat and scarf, skipped between them, humming a Christmas tune. The city outside the car window glittered like a snow globe come to life. When they reached Nora's building, Adrian didn't pull up to the usual drop-off spot. Come on, he said with a small smile. There's something I want to show you both. Nora blinked. At 10 at night? Trust me. She hesitated, but Lila was already bouncing in her seat. Please, Mom, just a few minutes. Nora laughed, defeated. All right, but only a few. The park was small, a patch of trees and benches by the river, now coated in a soft layer of snow. Street lamps glowed amber, their light bouncing off the flakes that danced in the air. Lila ran ahead, leaving footprints in perfect little patterns. It's like glitter, she squealed, reaching out to catch the snow. Nora stood beside Adrian, breath clouding in the cold. For a moment, they said nothing, just watched Lila spin under the falling snow, her laughter echoing through the quiet park. She's unstoppable, Adrian murmured. She's everything, Nora replied softly. He looked at her then, really looked, the kind of look that made time slow down. Nora, he said, voice low but clear, I've spent my whole life building things, companies, systems, walls. But you and Lila, you built something I didn't know I was missing. Her breath caught. "I don't just want to be your boss or your partner at Helios," he continued. "I want to be in your life, in hers. I can't promise everything will always be easy. Life never is. But I can promise you won't face any of it alone again." For a moment, the world felt suspended in the stillness of falling snow. Nora turned toward him fully. "Adrian," her voice trembled, not from the cold. "You don't have to. I know I don't have to," he said gently. "I want to." They stood there, inches apart, the air between them glowing with snowlight. Then a small voice broke the silence. "Hold hands already!" They both laughed, startled. Lila had returned, clutching a twig like a magic wand. "You're supposed to when people say nice things," she declared. Before either could react, she grabbed Nora's hand with one mittened fist and Adrian's with the other, pulling until their hands met. "There," she said triumphantly, before skipping off to draw shapes in the snow with her stick. Nora looked down at their joined hands, then up at Adrian. He smiled, that quiet, certain smile that had steadied her through the stormiest days. "I guess she's the boss now," Nora whispered. "She always was," he said softly. They stood together watching Lila trace a heart into the snow. Inside it, she carefully wrote 3 letters, M plus L plus A. Adrian's thumb brushed lightly against Nora's. "You know," he said, "this started because you stopped for a stranger in the rain." Nora smiled faintly. "I remember. I thought helping you would make me late for work." He laughed quietly. "It did, but I think it made us both right on time." She tilted her head. "For what?" "For this," he said simply. Snow fell thicker now, coating their shoulders, their joined hands, the park around them. Nora felt warmth bloom in her chest. Not the fleeting kind, but the kind that stays. She looked at Adrian, at the man who had once been a headline, a suit behind glass, and was now simply here. And she realized something. It had never been about luck or timing. It had been about choice. The choice to stop on a rainy morning. The choice to help. The choice to keep believing in kindness, even when it cost her everything. Because sometimes, the smallest acts rewrite an entire life. Lila ran back to them, breathless, snowflakes in her hair. "Mom, Mr. Adrian, look, the heart's for us." Nora bent down, pulling her daughter into her arms. "It's perfect." Adrian crouched beside them, his hand resting gently on Nora's back. "It's home," he murmured. Lila giggled. "Can we stay till it stops snowing?" Nora glanced at Adrian. He smiled. "We can stay as long as she wants." Above them, the city glowed through the curtain of snow, bright, alive, and impossibly gentle. Nora squeezed his hand one last time and whispered, "I'm glad I stopped that morning." Adrian met her gaze, eyes warm. "So am I." And as laughter and snow mingled in the frozen air, the world around them seemed to fade, leaving only 3 figures under the streetlight: a man, a woman, and a child. Their hands linked, their shadows merging into one. A family, unexpected, imperfect, and exactly right.